One, two. Test. One, two.
Hi, everybody. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Legal Affairs. Okay. 1 minute, they're now getting on. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Peabody City Council Legal Affairs Subcommittee. We have one item on the agenda this evening, and it's a request for proposals, RFP for 10 Lowell Street. Michael Voto and any other matters before this committee. Joining us tonight are committee members Sasslaw, McGinn, Turco, Rosignol. We're also joined by councilors Gould, Welton, Charest, and O'Neill. So tonight, we're going to get a presentation from His Honor the Mayor regarding an RFP and the response to that RFP. After that, there are a couple of members of the public that had wished to speak on this particular item. Under the discretion of the chair, I'm going to allow them to do so. After that, we will then bring it to the committee for discussion between the committee members and based on questions from the presentation, and then I'll open up to other councilors for their questions and comments. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening to you. Good evening to all of the councilors. Hope everybody's doing well. I think all of you are certainly very familiar with this property, very familiar with the history, very familiar with Brody's, Mr. Voto and his team, and what their operation is all about. I'm very excited today to bring forward this proposal to seek authorization from all of you in order to execute a purchase and sale agreement for the sale of 10 Lowell Street from the City of Peabody to Mr. Voto. Just a little bit of a background on this, and certainly there's a great deal that I can speak to about this. But we purchased initially the 12 and 16 Lowell Street property back in early 2014, very early 2014. The council vote was actually this date in 2013. We purchased that property. It was $180,000 from Codman Realty Trust. That was Codair family owned that property. There was a number of uses over in that building, real estate offices. In fact, some years ago, we actually had some city offices over there. And we purchased that property and demolished it to create some open space. For a couple of years after that, we were looking at other opportunities to potentially purchase the 10 Lowell Street site. In 2018, we were able to work a deal with Northfield Group. Northfield Group, I think all of you are familiar with, they purchased all of the Arthur Gordon property. They have since transferred and sold it to the Viceroy Group now that owns a significant amount of property in the downtown area. But Northfield separated this parcel, 10 Lowell Street, and was able to sell it to us. At the time, it was property, we purchased it for $425,000. We received $250,000 from the sale of property account. The sale and purchase of property, we have an account that's just directed towards that. And also $185,000 from community preservation funds for that $425,000. It's actually $435,000. We included $10,000 for closing costs and fees. At the time when we purchased it, we had one vacant piece. It was the former Downtown Pizza, you may recall. They had vacated the property a short time before we purchased the property. Then Brody's, everybody familiar with Brody's, and then at the time, Next Mex Thing was in that location right now, which is vacant right now. Next Mex had an agreement to move down on Main Street. They've had some incredible success, and now they're going to be opening, I think, in the next couple of weeks over at the corner of Central and Walnut Street. And they'll be opening shortly. And he has an exciting plan for Next Mex, and he has an exciting plan for the current property of which he's at. He'll still be utilizing that property with a different endeavor. And at the time, Mr. Voto was looking at other opportunities as well. I think we're all very familiar with that. I'm not going to detail that. But at the time, we were looking at having that property vacant. I proposed at the time that I thought it was a good idea to demolish that building, create a little bit of green space, create a bit of open space for some public events, and potentially do some flood mitigation that could help us with that area. That was at that time, and that's how it was presented to you. We were able to purchase that property and then move forward. Then, of course, COVID hit. The world has changed tremendously, and my feelings on the property and what I think would be the right direction to go to for that property has changed significantly as well. We have been able to do a terrific job working together. My office, City Council, our Department of Public Works, a number of contractors to really help our downtown situation in terms of being able to handle water. We've talked about this many times. For decades, we were plagued by severe water events, flooding, where we had to shut down the square, and the Brody's building was one that got hit significantly hard during that time. The investments we've made as a community, the upstream retention storage ponds that we did at Scouting Way and some other areas, as well as just the continued maintenance work that we've done in terms of cleaning culverts, removing items that have clogged our waterways, has really made a difference and has significantly improved our ability to handle water. Again, I will never say that those days are behind us. We've been severely tested this past year, particularly these last few months, and we've been able to do extremely well in the downtown area, in the area around Foster Street and Brody's. So certainly there's been great improvement there, which makes me feel that we can move forward with this investment or this sale. I also think that we've been able to utilize the area in front of the courthouse to have events. Unfortunately, not recently, but we've been able to use that as kind of a gathering space to bring people. We've had a number of events, and I think we're very fortunate to have that. I believe that selling this property to Brody's is important for many reasons. We have certainly, all of us have had a great focus and given great attention to try to bring some life, vitality, some energy to the downtown. We've been very successful, and I've talked about this in past at other meetings, but if you look at where the downtown was 10, 15 years ago to what it is now in terms of the restaurants and eateries and just the exciting locations we have downtown, I think we've made a great difference. Brody's, to me, is one of the cornerstone businesses of our downtown area, both figuratively and literally. It is at the corner of an important intersection for us, the main intersection of Peabody Square, and they are without question a business that brings people to this area. I firmly believe that a rising tide lifts all boats, and I believe that Brody's has benefited other businesses and restaurants in our area, and other restaurants and businesses have benefited Brody's in order to bring people and just create some excitement and energy. I certainly think that Brody's has been able to do that, particularly with their outdoor area, which I'll speak to in a moment. I think this is an opportunity for us to keep a business in our city, in our downtown. I can tell you right now, and I think all of you know this, that other squares and downtown areas, other cities and communities are trying every way possible, just like we are, to bring restaurants and eateries and people gathering businesses to their downtown. I want to keep Brody's here because it is a cornerstone property, it is a cornerstone business, and it is bringing people downtown. I don't want to push somebody away. I want to bring people in and keep the businesses we have here in the city of Peabody. I also think that it is a significant tax revenue for us. The real estate tax revenue, which we've never had out of that location in some time, and the meals tax that we generate from the Brody's operation would be significant and important for us. Every dollar earned is important for us. It certainly meets the criteria of keeping or employing people. All of us, again, have focused on that, trying to create jobs, make sure jobs stay here in the city of Peabody. And Mr. Voda will shortly talk about his operation in more detail, but he has a number of people working for him and Peabody people that are working for him in his operation. So for those reasons, I think this is extremely important to move forward with this sale. His vision, and I think all of you have the renderings, is just, to me, outstanding, and something that was beyond my hopes and expectations when we started to explore this some time ago. And I'm very excited to potentially bring that here to the city of Peabody. When the COVID hit, just to take a step back, when COVID hit, we did have that open space, that corner lot, when we demolished 16 Lowell Street. Mr. Voto and his team approached me about utilizing that space to have an outdoor venue. At the time, like all of us, I was trying to find ways to help businesses, try to keep people employed, trying to make sure these businesses like Brody's can sustain these difficult days of COVID. So we worked out an agreement that they were able to utilize that space. They just did a magnificent job. I think they brought even a new wave of people to the downtown that are just excited by what Mike and his team were able to do there. I think all of you know that, and you've seen people and heard people about the excitement that they have in coming to the outdoor Brody's. That would, when we do the sale, hopefully with approval, Mike would just be building on his, the location he is at now. We would not be selling 16 Lowell. That would remain city property. That would remain ours. And still the hope and plan would be to really beautify that area, create some green space. And I still have that hope of being able someday to have a George Peabody statue and celebrate a little bit of our history at that location as well. So that would remain open space at that corner. That would be the city of Peabody, and just a green space, an open area that I think we can really make very beautiful. So the presentation of this shortly will just be the building, and you can certainly see that great visual. That is certainly not exactly what we're looking at in terms of what I foresee for that corner lot, but that gives you just an example of what can take place there. And some of the parts, really fit, and it's just a great visual to contemplate that being at the corner. I do have Attorney Don Kahn here to answer any questions, as well as our Community Development Director, Kurt Bellavance. Our process, just like as we have done in the past in terms of RFP, we put out the RFP. It was in the Central Register for 30 days, and then we also advertised it in the Lynn item, and that was on August 4th and August 18th, and we had the bids due September 8th. We did have one bid, and it was Mr. Voto, and that's what I presented to you today. Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, we can go to Mr. Voto's team, and again, I'm certainly available to answer any questions. But again, I think this really checks a lot of the boxes that all of us are hoping for the downtown. It is a change in what I had presented some years ago, and I just feel like the world has changed, and Brody's has really elevated their work, elevated the excitement in our downtown. It's going to bring people to our downtown. It's going to bring tax revenue to our city. And again, I think this is just an important business to have to try to continue the efforts we've made to bring some vitality and energy. I feel like at this corner spot, the exciting project at 2 Washington Street, which is getting very close to happening, will really give us 2 strong ends to Main Street. And then a great number of businesses that have really, I think, has really changed the whole downtown as well. So I believe this is important for us moving forward. Again, happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we'll move forward with the presentation. And could you just state your name and address for the record, please?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the committee and Mr. Chairman. My name is Peter Calabresi, our office at 1 Boston Place in Boston. I'm the attorney for Mr. Michael Voto, who's here today, who's also the applicant to purchase the property before you. His architect is Joseph Betancourt there as well, who will be making a presentation later today, and the current general manager of the Brody's Pub restaurant is Amy Shire, who's also here this evening. What I wanted to do was just sort of introduce Mr. Voto to the committee and also a brief statement about the project and Mr. Voto's operation.
Can you speak in the microphone, please? Sorry.
And then I'll hand it off to Mr. Betancourt. As some of you may know, Mr. Voto is a lifelong resident of Peabody. He's a current business owner, obviously, of Brody's Pub. He's operated Brody's Pub successfully since 2011, pre-coronavirus lockdown, during the pandemic, and also since the pandemic. And as Mr. Mayor pointed out, he coordinated with the city to operate during the pandemic in an outdoor space on the fly to accommodate the business operations, to keep things going, and also to serve the community, as he's done since 2011. As you'll see from Mr. Betancourt's presentation, the proposed building is essentially a complete rebuild, which is going to allow for continued outdoor dining opportunities as well as indoor, and also add office space inside for new businesses to come in and rent space, which will bring more revenue to the city, more people, and you'll see it creates a gathering place outside along the brook, which we believe will be a benefit to the city in multiple ways. Mr. Voto has, prior to this, successfully completed many development projects, as you saw in his submission. He has the financial backing to carry this out through to completion, and he has proven to be able to successfully operate this business at this location, and the proposal before you would be to just enhance what is already there and to continue the legacy of Brody's Pub. And I'm free to answer any questions you may have at any time, and I'll hand off the presentation to Mr. Betancourt.
Ms. Betancourt, you just name and address for the record, please.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. My name's Joe Betancourt. I'm an architect with a design studio at 14 North Central Street, which is where I also live. It's a pleasure for us to be here tonight. We appreciate the opportunity. We have been working with Mike over the past few months, and we are excited to share the project with everyone tonight. I want to start, there we go. I don't know if you can see some of the text, but that's okay. I'll just kind of go through it quickly. Just to share a little bit about our project approach. We all know that 10 Lowell Street, although it's a small site in a small building, it actually occupies a very important part of our downtown. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are thinking holistically, and that we are thinking, although we don't control the limits beyond our site, that we are thinking and hopefully inspiring conversations that expand beyond our project. So you're going to see that as sort of a recurring theme tonight. So as we think about sort of the urban design responsibility of the project, we want to make sure that we're looking at the buildings in downtown Peabody, not necessarily mimicking the buildings, but just trying to understand, what is it about these buildings that give them quality and character, and to make sure that we are being responsive and responsible with our solution as well. There are some really good design guidelines that are part of community development that really talk about and address sort of design along Main Street. So we are planning to basically be led by those guidelines and work with community development on that. The Riverwalk Conversation, the Riverwalk itself is actually a few blocks from here, but we do have Goldthwaite Brook, which runs past here and ultimately connects to the Riverwalk. So again, this is beyond the realm of our scope, but just in the spirit of expanding the conversation, we'd like to maybe bring some of that to the table as we go along. And then just the idea of usable open space, as Mayor Betancourt had just referenced, we've seen that Brody's Backyard has been very successful, and there is a place, a need, and desire for usable open green space in downtown. And then public art. I think every project should have an art component, and this is an opportunity for us to maybe bring some of that. Again, maybe it's for 16 Lowell Street, but part of the conversation. As we start looking at the site a little closer, we actually have 4 very distinct edges. So obviously Lowell Street is the most public edge, and we want to be responsive and address everything that we need to make it inviting and really enhance the public realm and the experience along the sidewalk. To the left, we have the railroad track. And as you'll see in a moment, with the site plan, we've got, in one case, a 0 lot line condition. again, we want to be deliberate and thoughtful in how we respond to that condition. And you'll see specific to service with our proposed plan. To the rear, right, we have a new funeral home. So we want to be a good neighbor and make sure that we are, again, being thoughtful and responsive to that relationship. You'll see in the plan that we're actually putting an egress stair in that back corner, allowing us to keep that part of the building a little quieter, keep the light levels down, again, trying to keep that quiet along that back corner. And then, of course, to the right, we have Goldthwaite Brook, which runs past the project and in part underneath, as you'll see in the diagram. And then finally, just kind of our thinking regarding the public realm. Ultimately, this is really about creating a strong sense of place, so open, inviting, all of the aspirations that any good project downtown should have. It wants to be a destination, as Mayor Betancourt has mentioned, and it also should be responsible for contributing to the identity of downtown. So when people drive through Peabody Square, they get a sense of the vibe, the activation, the animation, and we just want to be thoughtful about that as we move ahead. So just taking a quick look at the existing conditions. So we are in the BC zoning district, which basically means that everything that we're proposing, the pub, office, the commercial space above, is all compliant when zoning, so we don't need any special permit. We'll just need a building permit that will allow the process to move along quickly. The site limits, as you see outlined in red, this came from a survey from Eastern Land Survey that was done in 1989. So one of the first things we want to do is to really confirm where the actual limits are. But you can see not only the configuration of the site itself, but the relationship of Goldthwaite Brook and how it sort of travels through and along the site. The first floor footprint, so that's kind of, I can't point to it, but that's the broader footprint that includes the one-story structure. We're looking at 3,100 gross square feet, roughly. Second and third floor, let's see if I can use the pointer. Oh, the pointer doesn't work. The second and third floors each are about 2,300 gross square feet. Yes?
Yes, Councilor Rosnell?
So just for clarification, are you talking about the yellow portion is first floor, that's the property? As far as the color coding goes,
Yep.
that's, the yellow is the entire property, and then the pink would be the building structure?
So that is correct. So what's in yellow and contained within the red line is the limits of the site. And again, I should preface this, we have not had this surveyed. This came right from the building department jacket. It was a survey that was done in 1989, but we didn't see anything else, so we're just using this as a starting point. But that's absolutely correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The purple portion represents the two upper floors, the smaller floor plates, which again are about 2,300 square feet. So overall, we're looking at about 7,700 square feet for the entire building. Let me go to the next slide here. So we've started to do some research. We've gone to the building department. We've pulled the jacket and started to go through some of the documents that are contained in that. We obviously have a long way to go, but one of the first things that we'll be doing is a full building analysis, just so we understand the foundation, the exterior, the structure, and that will really give us a good sense going forward for planning, phasing, and how we're going to deal with construction. So just taking a look at the existing conditions, this is the first floor plan. The building was designed originally to have a multi-tenant first floor. So you can see that we're actually showing the 4 entries on Lowell Street. So Lowell Street runs sort of left to right at the bottom of the screen. Peabody Square is to the left. City Hall is to the right, just for purposes of orientation. Entry number 1 is access to the existing vacant pizza shop. Entry number 2 is the staircase that takes you up to the second and third floor. Entry number 3 is the current location of Brody's Pub, the entry. And entry number 4 is the access to the one-story building to the right. One of the things that you'll notice from this slide is kind of the tenuous connection, or the tenuous situation with the servicing. And this is something, when we show the proposed plan, that we're going to resolve.
Councilor Turco?
Thank you. I just wanted to keep up with you while we go. So I'm looking at the left side of the building, the railroad tracks there. Is that to scale? Because I think the railroad tracks are a lot closer, correct, than what we are showing there?
Again, so I took a survey that was done, and I sort of traced it and used the dimensions to get it as close as possible. So what we plan to do is to make sure that we have everything exactly correct as we go forward. At this stage, we're just trying to get all the pieces kind of set in place, knowing that we're going to have a sort of fine-tune and refine the dimensions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Betancourt.
So again, here, you get a sense of the relationship of Goldthwaite Brook and how it sort of travels past the right edge of the one-story structure, and part of it travels underneath that building. The existing restaurant has 16 bar seats currently and 26 dining seats. Of course, that number is going to go up as we increase the square footage. Just want to talk a little bit about kind of the sense of place, and just to add to what Mayor Betancourt has said, everything that's happened in the past year and a half, for 16 Lowell Street, Brody's, a really great partnership between the city and Mike Voto. Brody's Backyard has been very successful. It's been a great animator and activator for that corner of Peabody Square. These happen to be some of Amy's pictures, but Mike employs 34 staff, and they're amazing. They do a great job, and you get a sense of kind of the activation that has been brought to this site. This tells us that there is really an opportunity for some public outdoor space. And so as we look at the proposed ground floor plan, there's a lot of information on here, but it's actually quite simple. We have reduced the amount of entries off of Lowell Street. We're showing 2 into 10 Lowell Street. The first entry to the left is providing access to the second and third floor. So if you're coming in to go to the second floor, you would come in through, and you might notice that we're showing 2 ramps. And part of that is we want to try to raise the finished floor elevation by hopefully a foot. If we could get 14 inches, that would be better. So entry number 1, you come up a ramp, through a little vestibule, little lobby that has a placeholder elevator, and you'll see one of the egress stairs for second and third floor, which would also be used as a communicating stair for the project, trying to minimize the impact of the upper floors on the ground floor so that we can leave most of the square footage for Brody's Pub. Entry number 2, again, as I mentioned, that's the current location of Brody's entry. So we want to try to keep that in place. You see we're adding a couple of steps with the raised floor, and also showing a ramp to get us to that higher elevation. The idea is that we want the entry to be intuitive. Everybody's going to arrive at the same point at the front door. Everybody comes into the pub through the same door, same location. So it's truly accessible. The new plan is showing 28 to 30 bar seats and 75 dining seats. Again, those numbers are going to change as we push and pull the plan. As you enter, the bar is to the left, general seating is to the right. You see the big gray area kind of tucked to the back left on the plan. That's really all of the back of the house functions. So we want to have a place for the trash contained in there, storage, the freezer, back of house kitchen, all contained in that area. The important thing to note with this plan is that we're adding a little service ramp right next to the building, again, to get us up that additional foot. But you can see that we want to stay away from that property line and make sure that all of the servicing is happening at 10 Lowell Street, and we are not going around to get to the back of the property. Again, Goldthwaite Brook, you see the relationship to the ground floor plan, and we just threw in some kind of festive words to kind of describe some of the ingredients that might go into the park to the right. Just a simple plan for the upper floor. Open plan is the best concept for this, but it could handle, breaking it up into multiple suites. So we end up with about 1,600 net square feet, and it's about 70% efficient. It's just a number that we want to track as we go through. This is kind of a stacking diagram just to show if you were to take off the face of the building, kind of looking through. So we see that Brody's Pub occupies most of the ground floor. Entry number 1, as I mentioned, to the left, that gets us access to floor number 2 and 3 for the office and commercial spaces above. You also see that we're starting to suggest, raising that floor up and where that ramp might go. Again, very early, very conceptual, but we just want to make sure that we're tracking the issues. And then as we get into some of the 3D views, so this is a general kind of broader view, looking at the project in context. And as I mentioned before, we just want to make sure that whatever we're doing architecturally is kind of, holding ourselves accountable to make sure that it is contributing to the fabric of downtown, and that it is being a little bit more civic in its architectural expression. One of the things that we are deliberately doing is we are transforming the association of the building from being more of a residential feel and associated with Chestnut Street, and transforming that to being a little bit more civic with the brick and the taller windows, and really contributing to creating an edge along the square. And then just zooming in a little bit more, this is a closer sort of bird's eye view. Again, our thought is we want to keep our building simple, distinct. It'll have its own character, but we do not want to compete with other buildings. We want to create visually a balance, for the corner, for the square. A common theme that you'll see in all of the views is that we are looking at the project through the public realm lens. So our building will not appear front and center, but that's just kind of how we feel the responsibility of the project is. So just another view, again, just kind of swinging around, getting a sense of sort of that 3D corner. Again, from this perspective, much quieter backdrop. You see we have some taller windows, but still wanting to be a little bit more understated. This view shows us on the ground, so Chestnut Street is to the right, Lowell Street to the left, and I know Mayor Betancourt said he has a different vision for the park, and that's great, but I think the message here is that we want to see our building through the lens of the public realm. And then just a few other views. As we start to turn the building now, we get a better sense of kind of the base and kind of the scale and how it responds to the sidewalk. The idea that the building can open up when it's warmer weather and really allow some of that internal use to kind of spill to the sidewalk and enhance that pedestrian experience. And just another view, similar. I didn't put together a video for it, so we have to kind of go slide by slide. This puts the brick at the center. Again, we think it could be a nice amenity between 10 Lowell Street and 16. And then just a slightly closer view, really just throwing all of the ingredients at the image of what we think will ultimately make a really great public realm, and some of the things that we might start to do with 10 Lowell Street project. And then as we get into the final few views here, so this is basically where we are today. If it's a building that needs work, this is a timely project. We know that some of the siding is falling off and building needs a lot of TLC. So we want to just start to kind of, this is still very early, but just the idea, again, of transforming the building from a more residential look and feel to a more civic look and feel. And we do have a lot of details that we need to work through. And then just kind of an evening shot, early dusk. This could be an evening like tonight. There's a meeting in here. Probably too much lighting on the building as it's shown, again, very early. But it's the idea that we want to be sensitive and thoughtful to the relationship with City Hall and making sure that we have light levels that, illuminate the building, contribute to the sidewalk, but are very thoughtfully done. So again, we thank you for the opportunity to share our progress with you tonight. We are free to answer any questions as best we can.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Badcourt. Thank you very much. So we will have some questions for you and the team. Prior to the meeting, I was made aware that a couple of folks from the public wish to speak regarding this particular item. Since it is a sale of public property, I'm going to use my discretion as the chair to allow that. My request to those that are speaking is to give us, we started slightly late due to taking down the voting. So if you could keep your comments to roughly 2 to 3 minutes, that'd be really helpful. If you want to come to the podium, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is John F. McCarthy Jr., 1 Pierce Road. I'm a former member of this esteemed body. I was Ward 5 councilor 40 years ago. Actually, I was at the first city council meeting in this auditorium. I sat in chair number 8, and I also served a month with Frank Wigan himself, who this auditorium is named after. I want to speak in favor of this project. Joe Voto is father, I've known a long time, and I've known Mike. Mike is a good operator. And as the mayor says, this business is a cornerstone of the downtown, and I love the mayor's vision for getting everybody downtown. And I think this would be a good project for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Just your name and address for the record, please, Bev.
Good evening. My name is Beverly Griffin Dunn, and I reside at 10 Colfax Street here in Peabody. And I'm on the school committee. And by way of disclosure, Mike is the son of my cousin, so he is my first cousin once removed. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and also just to say, when I saw the proposal online, I was thrilled to see the plan for Brody's for a couple of reasons. One is because I think that it's going to be really nice to further extend the activity at Main Street downtown, to start moving it along Lowell Street. I'm also really thrilled to see that there will be an elevator in an office building downtown. Right now, there isn't any elevator available for anyone who wants to rent office space. There are elevators in residential properties, but nothing in an office situation. So I think that's going to help greatly with attracting more businesses downtown. It seems to be like a very, very good mix. So I'm in support of this, and I hope that you will be too. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Bev. Anybody else? Seeing none, bring it to the committee members. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love a lot of the images, for sure. But I just want to regroup on this. My thoughts on this are pretty simple. I prefer the original plan. And I'd stated that previously before the council, so that's not new information. As the mayor said, and with all due respect to the mayor, it was to provide a measure of flood mitigation and an open space amenity. I think that was a goal that is still achievable. I want to be very clear, very clear. I have absolutely nothing against Brody's, quite to the contrary. I hope Brody's stays downtown and thrives. I've been a customer of Brody's for many years. I think what they've done there is great. I love the food, I love the atmosphere. I have absolutely nothing against that, and, you know, I honestly would be fine with allowing Brody's more time to relocate. I have absolutely no desire whatsoever to lose Brody's, so I just want to be very, very clear on that. But I think, you know, if Brody's had relocated, which was the plan, the city would have moved forward by now with the original plan, and we wouldn't be here. But that's not the case, so with all that said, what's before us here tonight is a request to authorize the mayor to execute a P&S. And I have a few concerns with taking that step, so I just want to vet some of those. Again, I have tremendous, I'm in agreement with much of what the mayor said about steps that have been taken on flood mitigation, upstream retention, some of the work that we've done on the maintenance of the rivers and streams, some things that he didn't say about the work that we've done by using the MVP grants and so forth, Veterans Memorial Park retention area. These are all very good steps. We need to do a whole heck of a lot more than that. You know, the historical flooding concerns that we have had are going to be exacerbated. That's a fact based on climate change. So this building is 100% in the flood zone and has been flooded, as was pointed out, multiple times over the years. I mean, at least on one instance, I've seen water flowing in the back of the building and flowing out the front door. So I have strong reservations about encouraging a large investment like this in such a flood-prone location. I mean, we saw those beautiful images. It would break my heart to advance this and then see that go underwater. And that the probability of that is fairly high, given its location and given what's going on with respect to climate change. I mean, you don't make an investment like this without an expectation that the building is going to have to be there for decades. And we know that in decades, things are changing, and it's not for the better. So the mayor broke down kind of the source of funding for the original purchase. I think he gave the number of $185,000, which came from CPC. I agree with that. So that money would have to go back to the CPC. That the open space purpose for which that money was allocated was not fulfilled, or would not be fulfilled under this plan, I should say. So that being the case, you know, and I don't know that this is a strong motivator for the change in the plan. I didn't really hear that from the mayor, so I certainly don't want to put words in his mouth, but it would not be a significant financial impact for the city, at least on the resale, because a sizable piece of that would have to go back to the CPC. And then just, again, we have to look at the RFP response, because it's based on that, that, you know, we need to make this informed decision. So there was a comment tonight, actually, school committee member Griffin Dunn mentioned it in her comments about the elevator. I saw that on the plan. I thought that was great. It's obviously required under ADA requirements for any kind of renovation on this scale. So then I looked in the breakdown of the costing, I didn't see in there a cost line item for the elevator. So I could have missed that. I'd certainly like to hear from the project team if that's in there someplace embedded in the cost estimates that I missed somehow. I also saw that in the RFP itself, section 3C4, it requires that a financial statement or a pro forma be submitted as part of the response. So I went looking for that. I did not see that statement in the submittal. So that's kind of it is a critical piece of information, because a statement like this is intended to provide the city with some comfort that the project would be financially viable over time. And, you know, without it, I don't know how we get that comfort level. So I'd be very reluctant to move forward on anything without seeing that pro forma. Again, if that somehow got missed from my package, but I have not seen it. And then just kind of looking ahead, it's not clear to me what would happen after the building. The building would, as I understand the plan and reading the RFP response, it's not clear to me what would happen after the building stripped down to the frame if structural deficiencies are found. And you know, I'm not an expert on structural engineering, but you know, it just seems with the difficulties that structure has experienced over time, particularly with flooding, that it wouldn't be likely to have some structural issues. What's going to happen if they get down to the frame and find that there's some additional structural work that needs to be done? So I was kind of looking in the cost estimates for some contingency for that type of work, and I didn't see that. It didn't jump out at me anyway. So I'd ask the team to kind of enlighten me on that piece of it as well. So I can't say that I would completely rule out supporting this, but I most certainly would like to see some additional information here, get some clarity on this before I'd say that that I would be ready to abandon the original plan and to say that this makes good practical and financial sense. So those are my initial thoughts, Mr. Chairman, and I would defer to other councilors or other committee members at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Mr. Mayor, did you?
Thank you. And fair points were raised. Respectfully, I disagree, and I worry that the items that Mr. McGinn has brought forward are really items that are worked on through the city in the due diligence period. What we're asking for tonight is approval of or allowing me approval to authorize me in order to sign the purchase and sale agreement. Once that's done, then the city enters into a period of time with Mr. Voto and his team for due diligence. This is a visual, a rendering. This is not the exact plan. They have to have the opportunity in order to put a final plan together to present to our building inspector's office. That review then could potentially trigger issues of review by the Conservation Commission, the Historical Society, building inspector, issues of items that were brought forward by Mr. McGinn in terms of stability of the foundation and potentially other items. Respectfully, that's not an item that is determined by the City Council. It's an item determined after authorization is approved that goes through our city boards and commissions. So that would be what I think we're being voted on today is what was put in the RFP authorizing us in order to move forward with the sale. This would take months before we would be ready to close. This would take a significant due diligence period in terms of seeing who they're financing and how that is going to work, as well as all plans and diagrams. I do know that Salem 5 is represented here tonight. is in, and they've told me that they are going to be financing this project, but there's a great deal of work that has to take place. We are not, tonight is not to hold them to the exact plan that's being submitted to you, because they have not had the opportunity. This was just a submittal on an RFP. Mr. Betancourt and his team put forward the information, kind of their ideas on what can work and what can happen, but they have not had the opportunity to do a full analysis of the building. They have not done a survey, none of that. That comes during the due diligence period. We're just looking to enter into an agreement so that we can take that step to do the due diligence period and do the work that both sides need to do to make sure that this project works for all of us. Once I have the authorization to sign the purchase and sale agreement, either party during that time would have the opportunity, if it doesn't work for any manner, if the project can't be done, if the foundation proves to be an issue, all of that would then allow either party to then say, you know, this isn't going to quite work. But we're not even close to that yet. So I fear that some of the information Mr. McGinn is seeking is very premature and is handled through our offices, through community development, through the building inspector's office, through our boards and commissions. All that has to be vetted through our boards and commissions. And I just wanted to, you know, to bring that up, that we're not going to have all the answers, nor will we until we have that due diligence period to really work and figure out all the steps that we need to take.
Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor. Mr. Mayor, I understand there's a process that would play out after this, and I'm not looking to usurp that process in any way. But if the RFP asked for a pro forma and we didn't get a pro forma, that's, you know, it's non-compliant. I mean, we're not here necessarily just to rubber stamp something based on looking at some pictures. It asked for some data. The data's not there. I think it's reasonable to ask for the information.
I certainly think that the information in terms of the budget breakdown was very detailed and provided a great deal of information, as what a pro forma would do is provide a breakdown of the costs that are anticipated. There's no way they could give you the costs because they have not had that opportunity again to have their analysis done of the building and their work. Pro forma is a breakdown of the finances, and I think that was part of the package, a breakdown of the anticipated costs.
So, Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor. There were two requests. There was preliminary estimated construction cost analysis of the proposed project schematic design level. That was provided. I agree. And that's what I looked at. That's where I was saying, hey, I didn't see the elevator on there, so that was where that question came from. You know, that's where the question came from. I didn't see a contingency if they encounter structural issues. So that's where those questions came from. The separate and distinct item in the RFP, the request was for a financial statement, financial pro forma, illustrating the capacity of the proposer to complete the work and the finance sources expected to be used to fund the project. I mean, that's a forward-looking projection, pro forma, so it's just a modeling exercise to show that it can be financially viable over time. It was a request in the RFP, and I didn't see the data submitted. So I don't think it's reasonable to say that hey, it's not there and the council shouldn't be asking for it. It's not there, and I think we should be asking for it.
Mayor, you can respond. But then
We have the bank here that's going to be financing the project. I would think, you know, we could certainly have the bank officer speak to their work with Mr. Voto in the past and be able to speak to their plans to fund this project. To me, that's, an opportunity that they're presenting today. That's why he's here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to move on to Councilor Sasslaw, who is next, and we'll continue on.
Thank you, Chairman Melville. I just had a couple of brief comments and a couple of quick questions. When going through the RFP, and thank you, Mayor, for getting out there. You know, I've been a big advocate for getting us on the market, and I appreciate the work that you put into it and the review staff and everyone that helped you with this. I did have one question. When we discuss downtown, the conversation many times, if not all time, includes bringing people to downtown. And a great example of this was 1 Main Street, Stanzies, that had a bar with live entertainment and housing above it. And I was just curious, what the thought process was in prohibiting any sort of dwelling space, whether it be apartments, condominiums, and ownership units or rentals. That just kind of stood out to me, and I was just, curious what the kind of the thought process was behind that, based upon the conversation that's been about downtown for the last number of years.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Councilor. Really, when we put out the RFP, we did state that it would be for commercial use. I thought that that would be more agreeable to the council.
And I understand that, and I appreciate that. I just publicly want to say, I would have supported some type of housing use, once again, based upon all the PDAT, all the downtown committee, everything I read about. They're looking for people to come downtown to spend their dollars. But thank you for answering that. And then, Mr. Voto, I wondered if you could just step to the mic. I just had a couple of brief questions, if I could. First of all, it's been a long time, Mike, huh?
Yes, it has.
Could you just state your name and address for the record?
Yes, my name is Michael Voto, the owner of Brody's Pub. I live at 14 Coolidge Ave in Peabody.
Thank you. When I look at a proposal like this, and I can appreciate Council McGinn's remarks, but what I look at is I look at the entrepreneur, and I see someone who is probably going to be upwards closer to $3 million of investment. I actually had someone who, call me today, asked about the RFP, and they said, oh, only $450,000. And I said, well, there's a lot more than $450,000. There's 7 figures behind that Mr. Voto and his team is going to have to invest. So I applaud you, and I recognize that, and the risk that, comes with that. Quite frankly, you being the operator for the past 10 years, who would know better about the risk? And at the end of the day, you'll be on the hook for that. And so I'm comfortable with the numbers you've provided. As I said, I want to thank you for what you and your entire team did. You were one of the few bright spots during the pandemic, and I say that sincerely and literally. What you did with the backyard barbecue, it was a place for people to go dine, to get out, when we couldn't go inside with a mask, and it was just a respite in your team and the challenges they did in serving the community, and I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for doing that. And then I had one last question. Just if I look at the narrative and I look at the construction timeline, so is it fair to say that once you finally come to the P&S and come to closing, if I look at it properly, would it probably be about 16 months before I'd be able to have a chicken kebab or a Phillips burger? Is that actually what will happen? It'll shut down for probably about 16 months?
Yeah, the plan would be to sort of stage our construction where we could start some stuff on where the pizza shop is, where the taco shop was, and then upstairs do some of the demolition work. But prior to all that, I kind of want to go back to a couple of Council McGinn's questions. In the packet, you asked questions about foundation work. Under the section with the breakdown of construction under masonry, there's a whole section in there, I forget the amount, it was 100 and something thousand that we allocated towards footings and structural work in the basement. In the second point that you brought up as far as financing and pro forma, I forget the words that you used, but like the mayor said, I do have Ed Lemazny, who's been a partner of mine in other projects, here in support and is committed to do the funding. And I'm also putting in a very large investment myself into the project. I'm not sure if what other information you'd like, maybe some tax returns or anything like that, but I'm more than happy to share anything that you'd like to see as far as to see if I can get the project funded and completed.
Mr. Voto, I appreciate you answering Councilor McGinn's earlier question, but Councilor Sasslaw had asked you about the timeline.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to that. And then Councilor Sasslaw, as far as timeline-wise, what we would do is we would first start, and this kind of goes back to Mr. McGinn's comments, before anything gets done, and Joe talked about this, we have to do a full assessment of the building. We'll bring in a structural engineer to take a look at the integrity of the building, go down into the basement, find out and do a whole structural report on the building, where it currently stands, and what it would take to bring it up to today's code standards. So all of that work would be done first. Then Joe would take that work and then impute that into his actual physical architectural drawings. Having a construction company as well, I've done this many a times, And that's, you know, the timeline that it's going to take. But we'll have to bring in a multitude of engineers, mechanical engineers, to do our plans so that we have every single base covered before we even start hammering any walls or anything like that. So there is going to be a great deal of sort of background work that must be done first before any type of construction starts. And then once the construction starts, we're planning the actual construction to be about 12 to 16 months, you know, getting all the permits, getting in place. Naturally now, with the supply shortage of certain materials, things could get dragged out, but hopefully by the time we start this project, that things will come back in line to historical standards.
Thank you for that information. And as I said earlier, you've been running it for 10 years. Obviously, is there risk involved? There's risk involved with everything. Is there risk involved with a little bit of water? Possibly, probably, but I'm comfortable because, you know, we're going to be out of the real estate business, and quite frankly, if anybody knows better how to alleviate those issues, you're going to own the building, it's your property, you know, that's the risk, but obviously you wouldn't be in front of us, and if you didn't feel comfortable, you wouldn't want to take that on. So thank you, and I do plan on supporting this RFP tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sasslaw.
Thank you,
Councilor Turco?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mike, while you're up there, if you don't mind, one of the things that I had a question about was the funeral home. And I only asked that because when, in 2018, we were told, you know, your building wasn't going to be there anymore. And then the planning board and the ZBA went forward and voted on allowing the variances and the construction for the funeral home. But now that it's there and you have outdoor dining that is going to abut it, how do we address if there's a... have you talked to Joe Ruggiero at all about if he had a funeral from 4 to 7 on a, you know, a typical funeral times 4 to 7, 4 to 8, how that's going to work if you have outdoor entertainment? There is an intention for outdoor entertainment at some point, I would imagine.
If you take a look at the plans, there technically isn't any outdoor. Where the taco shop was, that's going to be more of a 3-season area where there's going to be a glass atrium roof that's fixated that will never change. And then we're still kind of in the planning process of how we'd like to surround it, whether it be with, most likely it's going to be sliding glass windows. So that is something on a beautiful day where we could have those windows all open, and then on, you know, in the middle of January, we can have all those windows shut. So it would give you that sort of assumption and feel like you're outside, but there technically is no outside space. The plan is to just have all the windows on the sides to open up, where it'd be a fixed glass roof on top. So not like what we have now, which is currently completely open to the outside in the Brody's backyard area. And back to your other question too about Mr. Ruggiero, I've come to know him pretty well from his time owning the property behind me, and we have a great relationship. He comes over all the time, and we haven't, the whole time Brody's backyard has been there, we have not had any issues. We text each other, you know, on occasion if something needs to be talked about, or if somebody parked a car over there. But he's an excellent partner. I'm glad to have him downtown. I think he's done a beautiful job with his building, and I look forward to continuing that relationship down the road.
Thank you. You know, I'm glad to hear that you have that good of a relationship. And you know, it's nothing I could hold you to, but I'm just asking you, you know, in the event of a funeral, if you could talk to Joe, or Joe could reach out to you, and maybe you guys can. I know you can't dictate your business on the guy next door, but I just have that vision of, you know, the band playing while the casket's being brought into the funeral parlor, and it's not pretty.
Yeah, absolutely. With the plans too, I don't think we'll be able to have any live music. I think it'll be just too small of a space to have live music over there with all the tables and chairs and stuff like that. So I don't foresee it, and that is absolutely something I'll talk to Joe about. If he does have something midday or afternoon, I'm more than happy to shut the windows until his procession is over, and then we can reopen those up. But he also installed a pretty high, I think it's 9 or 10 foot white privacy fence all the way around the perimeter of his property as well, which I think is a great, you know, buffer, kind of encloses his whole place, and I think also would deafen any noise from Lowell Street or from anywhere around there.
Thank you. Yeah, he did. The fence actually looks great. What I should have started with, and I've always wanted to say this to you, is, you know, when I've said it to you in the past, downtown needs Brody's. Brody's has been the mainstay of downtown for, you know, think somebody mentioned 40 years. And during the pandemic, you know, I went by and did the curbside pickup, and, you know, you guys were hustling, and Amy in particular. And I remember talking to Amy at my car window, and she had said that you were giving them all a week off, so that's how hard you guys worked, that you had to give your entire staff a week off, even though you were doing well. So I'm glad you made it. I do have some other questions that are not pertaining to your project. I think the project looks great. I just have some questions about the procedure that I wanted to ask through the city solicitor. But as far as the project, I like the project. And
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask Attorney Khan to come up.
Attorney Khan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Don. I did, on a different subject, I sent you a couple of emails. I don't know if my emails are going through to you. I hadn't heard back from you. But as far as this subject today, I apologize for the lateness of it, the questions. It was just actually given to me by a resident at 4 o'clock today, and I didn't really have time to thoroughly review it. But I did want to ask you about, and I see that it's in the RFP, how did we come up with the price for the property at $450,000?
I didn't determine the price, but I think that we worked back from the, we started with the assessed price and went from there.
Okay, the assessed price listed today, anyway, I don't know what it was back then, is $377,800. But with that said, so what the resident dropped off to me is Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, regarding the sale of city-owned property. And regretfully, I looked in the city ordinance. I didn't see anything that we cover in the audience. But in the Mass General Law, and it's also quoted in the RFP, Section 16, subsection B says, the governmental body, which I believe is us, shall determine the value of the property through procedures customarily accepted by the appraising profession as valid. So the only real time that I had today, I made 2 phone calls. One was to ask about whether an assessed value is accepted by appraisers as an appraised value, and it's not from anybody that I talked to. And this same resident gave me another document because he followed further too with what's the name of the department in the state? Inspector General's office about the sale of property. So they do have an opinion on that, which then states that, and give me a second to find it, Don.
Yeah, actually, I could short-circuit this if I could.
Okay, go ahead.
What you're looking at and what you're dealing with would be determining a sale of city-owned land, not coming through an RFP. The RFP is a determination where the market sets the value based on the bidding prices, Counselor.
Okay, I'd have to read further. I'm not going to do that during the meeting, but further down it does mention that an RFP should be generated or could be generated for the sale of the property. So it doesn't say that it's only for property without an RFP. It specifically mentions an RFP within the Mass General Law. But then, let me move on to the Inspector General's office. So they say, in their opinion, that the City Council can, or the governing body, I'm sorry, can waive the requirement for an appraisal, but only under certain conditions, and that would be whether, when he brought it to me, it mentioned specifically that governing body, I became concerned because I'm the one that this law pertains to, as me as the governing body from what I read. So I just want to make sure that we're doing this right. For the edification of the resident, for the education of the council. I think the only council I've ever heard mention Inspector General's office and procurement was Councilor Manning, because I think she has some familiarity with it, but I don't personally, and I don't know if anybody else does. The other requirements by the Inspector General's office, it was 100% valuation. I'm sorry. So through conversation with Susan Antonellis, she used the income approach to evaluating the property. And that's where she came up with the $377,000. So I guess all of this, because it only came up, and I really hate putting anybody on the spot. The mayor knows I like to ask these questions to him and get those answers before. My question is, can we, and I do think, Mayor, I disagree. I think the RFP calls for the pro forma, and it's a requirement of the pro forma, and I'm not sure if everybody's aware of what it is, but Ed Greeley provided a great pro forma for his at 2 Washington, where he told us how much revenue he was going to make from the hotel rooms, how much revenue he was going to make from the restaurant, from the rental properties, and that was the pro forma to make sure that the project's viable, and that is the responsibility of this council. So I guess, long story short, Mayor,
This evening, I think a lot of that is questions that, to me, I can answer very simply. I put it out for $425 because that's what we bought it for. I looked at the estimate, or the appraised value was $377. We bought the property for $425. You put it out on an RFP or through an auction because the market dictates the value of the property. To me, it's very simple. Value. I could have went and spent money. To me, it didn't make sense to spend money on getting an official appraisal done because of the fact is it's going to be done in RFP and anybody would have the opportunity to bid on it and determine the market value of the property. Mr. Voto put for $450 above what
that he wanted to sell it for $425, and that the questions about the law weren't relevant. So you don't, is that your legal opinion?
Well, with all due respect,
Yeah.
throwing random snippets of law at me at a meeting is difficult to respond to.
Question for something that I'm going to sign my name to. So I prefer to not sign my name to things that I didn't fully vet, and I didn't have time to fully vet this. So that's why I asked for the 2 weeks. I mean, we've waited 3 years. I really don't see the big deal with giving this council 2 weeks to get the proper information. I'm not sure why we required Ed Greeley to provide a pro forma a month ago, but we don't have one tonight.
Attorney Khan, you can answer.
Thank you.
Yes, Council, I'll defer.
If I gave you the impression that I'm offended by your question, that's not a correct impression. You certainly have the right to ask any question that you'd like, and I'll try to respond to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Attorney Khan.
Thank you.
Councilor Turco, any other members of the committee?
This is a large-scale project. This is something that I think we all want, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't see, I guess, the rush to judgment if we don't have all of the information before us. Like I said, this is a project that I'm absolutely in favor of. I just want to make sure that we're actually looking out for the taxpayers' best interest regarding the appraisal and making sure that Mr. Votto has the financial backing to do exactly what he's set forth. This project looks amazing, and I think it will absolutely be a bookend, as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, for downtown. You'll have roadies on one end, you'll have 2 Main Street. In our packet later on, the Children's Museum will be right in dead center. I think we're really absolutely transforming downtown, and I think this is a vital cog to that. We've been having this, the city has owned this property for a number of years now, and I too don't understand the rush to judgment in one meeting when there are still outlying questions. Again, I'm 100% in favor of this. I think this is a fantastic project. I just want to make sure that we have all of our due diligence done before we move forward. That's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rosano. Were any other members of the committee have anything else? Because I'm going to open it up to other councilors. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm going to come at this just from a different perspective, maybe a historical or an institutional perspective. I recall, I think that this property, 10 Lowell, and may I jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, 10 Lowell Street was, the mayor had come to the council requesting to purchase the building in 2017. And about 4 years before that, the mayor had come to another council, a previous council, to purchase 16 Lowell Street. And that's some time ago. That's, 8 years ago when we began to purchase that corner of Lowell Street. And that times have changed, as the mayor has said. And I remember when the mayor came to councilors when he was first elected, brand new mayor, and the dream and the vision and the plan that was behind originally purchasing both of those properties, 16 and 10, was the idea of having a boutique hotel and a garage. So the two properties, that one of which we're speaking of this evening, in addition to 16, the idea was to take those in effort to work towards part of that hotel plan, which was to bring a parking garage there. So it was a parking garage and some flood mitigation behind the request for the 16 Lowell Street purchase back in 2013. Okay, so all of this emanated from the idea and the vision that surrounded revitalizing downtown. And at that time, it was the key proponent was the boutique hotel. So we all know that that did not transpire. And as the mayor said, times have changed, the economy has changed, plans have changed. That plan didn't pan out. So I commend the mayor for coming up with another plan, because that plan had it gone forward, that would have been a park there. There would have been a park there that was part of the plan. But that plan did not come to fruition. If we continue along the lines where we say, well, we don't want another building there, we want to go along with what some are calling tonight the original plan, I don't think that, from my perspective, with my years on the council, that wasn't the actual original plan. But that's just my point of view. The park is not going to bring us any revenue. The park is not going to provide jobs. The park isn't going to bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars of meals tax that this sale, for this purpose, for Brody's, will bring in. It employs people. It is the hub that has generated a lot of interest, a lot of foot traffic. The outdoor dining, as the mayor and Council Saslaw has said, that, it was respite at a time where people needed to go out. They needed to see other people. They wanted to go out and dine. They wanted to socialize. And this business took the chance and did that. And it was not easy, but they were successful. So successful that we now are advocating for more outdoor dining throughout the city. So the original plan of a park, it won't bring in any taxes, it won't bring any revenue. And it was an old plan that generated from a different idea of a different time. So again, I commend the mayor for reassessing what is needed at this time that will generate revenue, it'll improve the downtown area, and it'll continue to provide a very bright, successful, energized, revitalized downtown that we've all been working for the past 20 years. And I think that this is just one more step forward for us to keep moving in that direction and to have a vibrant downtown that we've all want and that we're all working towards. And we are getting there. And I think to not support this, to allow the mayor to enter into a purchase and sales agreement will be a huge detriment. And it'll block something that really does need to go forward so that we can continue our momentum. And I'm behind the mayor on this one 110%. So I hope that the members of the Legal Affairs Committee, which I am not one, will make the right vote this evening so that it doesn't get jammed up in subcommittee, because I think it will be detrimental. So if my colleagues could just consider my words and the history of these purchases that we've made and what was behind them and in the direction that we have been going, I'd like you to reconsider that and hopefully allow the mayor to move this forward to full committee tonight by allowing him to enter into the purchase and sales. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin, for those words, and I appreciate that. I just want to speak for a minute, because certainly the opinions of the councilors matter to me, and certainly I don't want Councilor Turco to think that we're upset. I have never seen, I've been with Attorney Khan now for 25 years, and I've never seen him upset. Sometimes I wonder if he has a pulse, and if he, really, I wonder. And certainly, the questions you ask, and those are legitimate, fair questions. I think sometimes just my excitement for this project and my, my passion to try to move this forward, gets me going, and again, just like sometimes just the excitement of, because I really think this is going to be tremendous for us, and really be a bright light for the future of the downtown. And those are fair questions. It's just sometimes, particularly as Attorney Khan stated, sometimes it is difficult, because I know you guys have had this information for a while, and had we knew this meeting was coming, but I also, and you've always done this, Councilor Turco, you just call with questions ahead of time so we can try to work out some of these things. However, I also know, because I sat as a councilor for many years, you're getting calls at the last minute, and that's when things pop in your head and you're getting information. So it's a tough balancing act, but my hope is just, I really excited about this project. I think it can be a big step for us. If all of you need, or if you need some additional time, I just talked to Mr. Voto. We're good with moving it to the November 9th. I think that's the respectful thing to do, and I know I don't want to speak for any of you, but certainly the two of you stated that you're in favor of this, and I want to make sure that you're comfortable with that vote at the end of the day. And it's just my passion, just excitement for this, and I wanted to push forward today. I'd love to have the vote. I'd love to be able to just start the process for them and get them to do their work and have it to do that. But I want to be fair to the council, and I know how it works, where people are calling at the last minute, and you want to make sure that you have that information, make sure you're comfortable with the vote. So I'm ready to move forward, and have this set for November 9th.
Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, first of all, I want to say thank you very much. Because I do generally try to sort this stuff all out. I'm to Attorney Khan. I apologize if I assumed you were angry, but I guess that's the loudest I ever heard you speak. With that being said, Mayor, did you ask Mr. Voto, or can I ask Mr. Voto, is 2 weeks enough time for him to provide the pro forma and get that to us by I think it's next Thursday would be the close time?
Yeah, that's no problem. We can have that information. Whatever you guys need. I don't want, whatever it's 7 votes. I want 100% of the votes. So whatever you guys need from me, I'm more than happy to supply it to you guys to, feel comfortable and make the right decision.
Thank you, Mr. Voto, and I think Mr. Councilor Melville is going to tell me something about the timing of November.
Yeah, so thank you, Councilor Turco. A couple things first off, I'm fully supportive. I'd vote on it tonight. I'd vote in favor of it tonight. When Don Kahn tells me he feels something is in order, I'm fine with that. But I understand and I respect my fellow councilors. And as Mr. Voto said, I'd like to see us get to 100% support. With that being said, I do need to talk to the council president on timing. I know there are a couple, I just asked the clerk, there are a couple of hearings that night. There are a couple of subcommittee meetings already scheduled that night. I can tell you I will be very motivated to have this legal affairs subcommittee meeting to get this out in front of the council. I do not want this held up any longer than possible. So what I would ask, Mr. Mayor, and I think we should work through your office and Attorney Collins, is that once we get that information, we can then get it out to the entire council as soon as possible, and I will schedule a subcommittee meeting as soon as possible after that point. Obviously the information is the point that will get us to the meeting. So as soon as we get that, I want to assure all the councilors that I'm very motivated to get this approved. Mr. Mayor, does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. I can talk to President O'Neill and our city clerk, and I know we have a couple of meetings. One of them is a executive session Nothing is real timely on that. It was just more of an update on some things, so maybe we have some flexibility there. But depending on when Mr. Voto can put that information together, I can coordinate with Council President O'Neill and City Clerk Allison Danforth to make that happen. So I'm very comfortable with that plan.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So for all the members of the committee, that will be the plan. Councilor McGinn?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we would want a couple of motions out of this, right, to make sure we're getting the information so that we have a constructive meeting there when we reconvene. It's through you to Councilor Turco. Could you have a specific ask on the procurement law so that we can get that legal opinion?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Council McGinn, I will send Attorney Khan the information that was sent to me by the resident, but I can make the phone call to the Solicitor General and get their opinion on the process. Either way, but, you know, if you'd like to provide yours to the council, I'll make that motion to have you provide an opinion as to whether we follow the procurement laws as dictated by the Inspector General's office.
That would be fine. If you could forward me whatever material you think is relevant that's been sent to you, I'll be happy to look at it.
I'll definitely do that, and that's the motion, the first motion, Mr. Chairman.
You heard the motion. Councilor Turco, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you. Council McGinn, I'll defer to you. I mean, I could make the motion to continue to the, the Legal Affairs Committee meeting and leave this in committee, but if you have other motions, I'll defer.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we request the applicant to submit the financial statement or pro forma in compliance with Section 3C4 of the RFP. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. You heard the motion. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn, anything else?
Yeah, I would ask, in a form of a motion, move that the applicant provide some clarity on their cost estimates with respect to the, that they've captured the contingencies for the structural issues. I think Mr. Voto alluded to that in his quick commentary, and that they've also captured the cost of the elevator shown in the plan. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Before we vote, I just want to ensure, does the applicant, does the respondent to the RFP understand what the council is requesting? I just want to make sure we're not all, that afterwards this is confused. Okay. He's been the, Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council McGinn. Move to keep this agenda item of the RFP for 10 Lowell Street in committee until the clerk is available to schedule.
like to call to order this meeting of the Peabody City Council Finance Committee meeting. Present for the committee tonight are Councilors Gould, Councilor Manning Martin, Councilor Rossignol, and Councilor Turco.
Would be the first one for the year out of that account to do a municipal code review and improvement. I guess Allison's here, she could elaborate if there are any questions.
Questions from the committee? Councilor Gould.
Chairman, I have no questions. I'm ready to make a motion when its time is right. Thank you.
Seeing no questions from the committee, questions from other councilors? Seeing none, Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to transfer from budgeted reserve account number 100132057.
Manning Martin. Yes. Turco.
Yes.
Rossignol.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Second item on the agenda is appropriation rideshare transportation enhancement trust in an amount of $16,468.60. Mr. Gingras.
This is a request to approve the authorization of the use of these funds for a matching amount for the Riverwalk and for the Peabody Salem Riverwalk. It's not necessarily a transfer, it's just an approval of the use of the funds that exist in this account.
Questions from the committee? Questions from other councilors? Seeing none, Councilor Gould.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the, as Mr. Gindras said, the rideshare account. I'm drawing a blank, Mr. Chairman, as to where.
I think the motion would be to approve the request to utilize the funds for rideshare transportation enhancement trust, account number 250-000-35835, in an amount of $16,468.60.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Councilors, you heard the motion from Councilor Gould on the motion. Seeing none, roll call.
I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Peabody City Council. The City Council will convene on Thursday, October 28th, 2021, to hold a regular meeting at 7:30 p.m. for the purpose of discussing any and all business, including both in-person participation and remote participation in accordance with Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws and pursuant to the Act extending certain COVID-19 measures with provisions relating to open meeting law. This meeting of the City Council will be conducted via in-person participation as well as by remote participation. Real-time public comment during public hearings can be addressed to the Peabody City Council using the Zoom meeting platform for remote access. Users may view the meeting and make a comment or question to the chair via the audio option. This meeting is being televised live by Peabody Access Television on Comcast Channel 9 and on RCN Channel 15, as well as being recorded by our City Council stenographer. All councilors are in attendance this evening. Let us all please rise for a moment of silence. Thank you. Would you now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Approval of the record, Mr. President.
You've heard the motion by Councilor Gould. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. We'll now move to hearings, and the first hearing is a Class 2 motor vehicle license transfer. The clerk will please read the notice. The applicant can come up to the podium if they would like while she's reading the notice. Thank you. I'd like to ask, is Jeremy Martin here this evening? Don't believe the applicant is here this evening. Can I get a motion to continue this hearing, please?
So moved.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to continue this hearing till our next regular city council meeting. So moved.
You've heard the motion from Council Moussoulas. On the motion, any discussion? All in favor? It's a vote. We'll now move to hearing 4B, which is a special permit, a request to use a portion of the premises for a plumbing and heating business and to continue the use existing second floor for residential apartments. Clerk will please read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody, acting as the special permit granting authority, will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, October 28th, 2021, at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., and remotely via Zoom on the application from Drew Donnarummo Plumbing and Heating, Inc., 82 Margin Street, Peabody, Mass., for a special permit requesting to use a portion of the premises for a plumbing and heating business and to continue to use the existing second-floor residential apartments at said 82 Margin Street, Peabody, Mass., as filed in accordance with Sections 1.5, 6.1, and 15.7 of the Peabody zoning ordinance. For remote participation using the Zoom platform, please visit www.peabody-ma.gov under City Calendar on the homepage or contact the City Clerk's office. Zoom information will not be available until the Friday before the meeting. Peabody City Council, Councilor Mark J. O'Neill, City Council President.
And thank you. Good evening, Mr. Vonzelis. Would you please state your name and address for the record and give us an overview of this special permit request?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Ethan Vonzelitis. I'm an attorney practicing law at 246 Andover Street in Peabody. I am here on behalf of the petitioner this evening, and with me is Mr. Drew Donnarummo. As I stated in the application, the petitioner is an owner of a plumbing and heating business with his primary place of business in the city of Chelsea. He's owned that business now for over 36 years. The great majority of his work and his customers come from the greater Boston area. However, his customer base has been gradually expanding into the North Shore area. And as a result of that, he had purchased the property at 22 R. Stevens Street in our city back in 2018. This council then granted him a special permit to utilize that property for a plumbing and heating business, and he's utilized that property since then for the indoor storage of his inventory and his supplies. However, he does find himself needing additional storage area and some space for a couple of offices for him and his wife. He recently purchased the property this evening at 82 Margin Street back in July, and he desires to be able to utilize that property as his second satellite location here in the city of Peabody. Our property contains a colonial-styled two-story mixed-use building. The building contains about 3,700 square feet of area. It's situated on a lot that contains about 6,600 square feet. It's located directly across the street from the Bishop Fenwick High School, and it's also situated in the R1A zoning district. This property has received special permits in the past due to the non-conforming use of the property. In 1985, the property was issued a permit to operate quarters for plumbing subcontractors. And in 1998, the prior owner, Mr. John Marabito, was issued a permit to use the property to repair, to construct, and wholesale car stereo systems, stereo display boards, for the sale, service, and installation of car security systems, stereo systems, and cellular phones. That's a lot. I believe Mr. Marabito used the entire first floor as his workshop and also as his display area, and I believe he occupied the upstairs apartment. If granted this permit, the petitioner would use the first floor, which happens to contain a large two-door garage area for the storage of their equipment and supplies. It also create a couple of small offices for he and his wife. And the second floor apartment, which contains a little over 1,300 square feet of area, will remain an apartment. Mr. Donnarumo's son, Matt, is now engaged, and he and his fiancee will occupy that apartment. Due to the nature of the petitioner's business, approximately 95% of his work is performed off-site. Unlike Mr. Marabito's business, our customers don't come to this property at all because it's used just for the storage of inventory and equipment. In addition, his use of this property or his business doesn't require constant travel to and from this property. His employees will come to this building anytime they have a North Shore area job and they need to pick up some type of inventory or equipment. Being a satellite location, there's never going to be more than 2 or 3 vans that would be at this particular property. Most of the vehicles are almost always stored at their Chelsea location, or they're brought home by the employee after a day of work. In essence, the petitioner's use of the property is going to generate far less traffic and far less visits to this property than the previous use. We don't manufacture or make anything, so there's no noise associated with it. And in addition, we're not proposing any type of exterior changes to the building. I do have Mr. Donnarumo and his wife Deirdre here with me this evening, and together we'll try to answer any questions that either the council or the public may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vonzalides. Are there any members of the general public who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Are there any members of the general public who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Move to the Zoom application. Looks like we have one attendee, and I can see now that Jeremy Martin he is on this Zoom application. He was with the first hearing. We will move to him after this hearing. I just wanted to make that note if he can hear us. At this time, seeing no one in favor, are there any members of the general public who'd like to speak in opposition of this application? Are there any members of the general public who'd like to speak in opposition to this application? Seeing no one, Councilor Matsoulis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spoke to the party earlier, and it's an accepted use in that neighborhood. And that neighborhood I know pretty well. And if there was any objection to what you were going to do or what you plan to do, I'd have already heard it. The neighbors would have called me. I know most of them. Council Gould, I'm sure, would have heard something also. Are the hours of operation changing at all, or is...
Nathan, we need the microphone.
Our hours of operation are Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. There are no weekend hours except for emergency repairs or service. If someone's heating system blows out on a Saturday in the middle of the winter, and we have to go to the premises to pick up the inventory, we're going to have to do it.
That's acceptable. That, I don't see a problem with that. You have an apartment upstairs, which you have every right to rent out. Are you planning on using that premise for your own use, or?
Right now, it'll be for our own use. His son, Matt, got recently engaged, so he and his fiancee will occupy that apartment.
Okay. I don't see a problem here. I'll turn it over to the council. Thank you.
Councilor Turco?
Thank you, Mr. President. Ethan, did you handle the first hearing for 22 Rear Stevens Street 3 years ago?
Yes.
I'm trying to remember it, actually, because I've used Mr. Geronimo before personally at my house, so I kind of remember the hearing. The synopsis here says that he needs additional storage, but isn't 22 Rear Stevens Street up for sale right now? Is it? Okay, because I think it was the Elks was actually looking at the building to purchase at some point, and then that was the gist of my question. I thought it was for sale, so I didn't understand the statement that it was for additional storage, but that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Any other councilors? Councilor Gould?
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the applicant, I happen to have Councilor Murtagh come in and ask me to please speak and welcome you folks to the neighborhood. Councilor Murtagh is a direct abutter going up Colonial. He's the first house on the right behind. And he just wants to make sure you're respectful, knowing that it's a neighborhood. Okay, and I will pass that along to him. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Councilor Manning Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to Councilor Turco. I remember this hearing as well, and it's kind of like deja vu. So my concern at that time, which was unwarranted, that we know today, was that it was in a residential down Stevens Street, but there have been no calls, no problems, and I'm sure that they will be as equally as respectful and fit right into that neighborhood. Very respectful, and there's never been a call, so I support it 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. Any other councilors like to speak at this time or ask questions? Seeing none, Councilor Matsoulis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd like to close the public hearing.
You've heard the motion by Councilor Matsoulis. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Matsoulis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve a special permit for Drew Donnarummo Plumbing and Heating Incorporated at 82 Margin Street for the use of a portion of the premises for a plumbing and heating business, and to continue to use the existing second floor for residential apartments. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to throw in the hours of operation, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's it, Mr. Chairman. So moved. Thank you.
Point of clarification, Councilor Matsoulis, is that a condition with the hours being Monday through Friday, 7 to 6 p.m.?
This way here, there's going to be no questions asked later on about hours of operation.
Can we include except for emergency service or repairs?
Yes, include that. Yep.
Great. I just wanted to clarify, make sure the clerk had the proper motion. You've heard the motion by Councilor Matsoulis. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Councilors Gould?
Yes.
Manning Martin? Yes. Sasslaw?
Yes.
Welton?
Yes.
Charis?
Yes.
McGinn?
Yes.
Mitsoulas?
Yes.
Turco?
Yes.
Rozignol?
Yes.
Melville?
Yes.
O'Neill?
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
As I stated earlier, when I was looking on the Zoom participants, it looks like I missed Mr. Martin, who is the applicant for the license transfer And as we all know, typically we have for special permits, we have the applicant come here, but whereas this is license transfer and this person has been waiting, I think it's appropriate that we continue and see if we can just make sure we can tackle their application. So I'll now ask the clerk to please read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, October 28th, 2021, at 7:30 PM in the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., and remotely via Zoom on the application from Jeremy Martin, 467 Reservoir Road, Lunenburg, Mass., requesting the transfer of a Class II motor vehicle license from Auto Choice of Peabody, Inc. for property to continue to operate at 249 Andover Street, Peabody, Mass. For remote participation using the Zoom platform, please visit www.peabody-ma.gov under City Calendar on the homepage, or contact the City Clerk's office. Zoom information will not be available until the Friday before the meeting. Peabody City Council, Councilor Mark J. O'Neill, City Council President.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Martin. Could you please state your address for the record and give us an overview or summary of your request? Mr. Martin, can you hear us? Mr. Martin, can you hear us, and can you try your microphone?
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly. Thank you. Once again, thank you for coming. If you could just state your address for the record and give us a summary of your request, please.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Council. My name is Jeremy Martin. I live at 467 Reservoir Road, Lunenburg, Mass. 01462. I'm looking to transfer the dealer's license that's been at 249 Andover Street in Peabody under Glenn Pierce for the past 18 years and transfer it to my name and keep the business the same name and keep things going just as they've been.
Thank you. Are there any members of the general public who'd like to speak in opposition of this application? Excuse me, in favor of this application? Any members of the general public who'd like to speak in favor of this application? Are there any members of the general public on Zoom application who would like to speak? Clerk has reminded me no one else is on at this point in time, so we'll now move to, are there any members of the general public who would like to speak in opposition of this application? Are there any members of the general public who would like to speak in opposition? Once again, there's no one on the Zoom platform, so seeing no one, Councilor Matsoulis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I do anything, I'd like to go to item 8D and make a motion to receive.
You've heard the motion from Councilor Matsoulis. On the motion, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Matsoulis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is a simple transfer of license. I'd like to ask the applicant if there are any changes that we don't know about.
There are none. I worked for Glenn for 3 years. I then purchased Auto Choice in Middleton. I've been running that for the last 2 years, and recently purchased the Peabody location from Glenn.
Okay. I'd like to ask the applicant if he would take this into consideration. The neighbors are, I guess, concerned about parking on Walter Street and Gate Street. I'd like to bring that to your attention so that you could make sure you work with the neighbors, because if they start complaining, you know, you'll have to come back before this council.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Councilman Matsoulis. Are there any other members of the council who would like to speak or ask any questions? Seeing no one, Councilman Matsoulis.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
You've heard the motion from Councilman Matsoulis. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilman Matsoulis.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a transfer from Glenn A. Pierce, doing business at Peabody Auto Choice of Peabody Incorporated. Wish to make the transfer to Jeremy Martin. So move.
Heard the motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin. Sasslaw.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Matsoulis.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilman Matsoulis.
like to make a motion to receive 8E on our agenda. It was for the last special hearing we just had.
You've heard the motion from Councilman Matsoulis. On the motion, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Thank you, Councilman Matsoulis. At this time, we'll now move to hearing 4C, which is an application from Farm Street Realty for an outdoor dining license. The clerk will please read the notice.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, October 28th, 2021, at 7:30 p.m. in the Frank L. Wigan Auditorium, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., and remotely via Zoom on the application from Farm Street Realty Group, LLC, 2 Washington Street, Peabody, Mass., requesting an outdoor dining license at said 2 Washington Street, Peabody, Mass., as filed in accordance with Section 5.4.6 of the Peabody zoning ordinance, as shown on a plan of land dated August 30th, 2021. For remote participation using the Zoom platform, please visit www.peabody-ma.gov under City Calendar on the homepage, or contact the City Clerk's office. Zoom information will not be available until the Friday before the meeting. Peabody City Council, Councilor Mark J. O'Neill, City Council President.
Mr. President, before you get
Councilor
started,
Neville.
to be consistent, I'm going to be recusing myself, as this could be a part of a alcohol beverage control, an alcohol license application in the future, and I don't want to put the appearance of conflict for either myself or for the applicant in that future, and with my position with the ABCC. So I'll be recusing myself. Thank you.
Understood, Councilman Melville. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Betcourt. Welcome. Would you like to just give us an overview of this particular request?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening again, councilors. Hope everybody's doing well. I'll be very brief. Certainly, you're probably tired of hearing me talk about this project. I think everybody knows it in great detail. This is really the final piece in order to move forward with the closing. This project is funded. This project is ready for work to begin. We're hoping to have a closing date within the next couple of weeks. But this is the final piece, and it is an important piece, the outdoor dining, because their anticipated revenue projections and are significantly based on outdoor seating and utilizing that area as a place to have tables and have people. Approximately 25 to 30% of their anticipated revenue is for outdoor dining, so it is an important piece, and that's what's brought us here today. I want to commend and thank Councilor McGinn. We've been working together with the petitioner, Ed Greeley and his team, to come up with a reasonable approach for this particular area, recognizing that there are neighbors and a mix of commercial and residential. Councilor McGinn has some conditions, some language that we've worked with him on, and we're very comfortable with moving forward. Certainly, I can get into more specifics and plans. Ed is here with Attorney Panos. We can get into more detail if the council would like. Certainly willing to do that, but I've talked at length on this project, so certainly I think all of you know how I feel about it and its importance. But I'm ready to move forward unless there are questions.
Thank you, Mayor Bettencourt. Are there any members of the, does anyone have any initial questions before I open it up to the general public? At this time, are there any members of the general public who would like to speak in favor of this application? Are there any members of the general public who would like to speak in favor of this application? I don't see anyone on Zoom at this point in time, so I'll now move to any, are there any members of the general public who would like to speak in opposition of this application? Asking again, are there any members of the general public who would like to speak in opposition of this application? And there's no one on the Zoom for that particular piece. Seeing no one, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, move to receive item 8C and refer to this hearing. So moved.
You've heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with the mayor's comment with respect to this being the final piece. We received a pretty good preview of this from the applicant at the special permit hearing on September 23rd, so you should have a pretty good understanding from that presentation what the area looks like and so forth. You may be asking yourself, I certainly was, why this is coming before us, because this section of zoning we had suspended through December 31st of this year. That was a function of the temporary expansion of outdoor dining under the emergency regulations. So at first I thought that it might not make sense for this to be before us, but actually it does from my perspective, because when I looked at what we did with the temporary suspension of that provision of zoning, it included the language that the suspension applied to restaurants that were in existence on June 1st, 2020. And this restaurant was not in existence on June 1st of 2020, so it would default to zoning. So I think it makes sense that it's before us. As the mayor indicated, I spoke with the property owner most impacted with direct residential abutting property, as has the applicant. We do have some conditions, and as you heard from the mayor, the applicant's fully agreeable, and those have been worked out. These include buffers, some adjustments to the hours, and some lighting considerations. There's also some conditions put forth by the health department that we've included. I think that, I get comfort from, the fact that to a considerable extent, I think any of the impact that might be potentially felt by abutters would be self-regulated by the applicant, because they're not going to want the outdoor dining to be disruptive to their own bed and breakfast guests. So, I think that they're not going to create conditions that are going to in any way diminish their ability to have a successful B&B operation. Again, I kind of view that as somewhat self-regulating. So I'm in full support of the application, and at this time I would defer to other councilors.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Councilor Welton and then Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just had a question, and my thought was maybe because we had suspended the process for applying that it might not be necessary, but I didn't see a department response from police or fire on this, and I'm fully supportive of this project. I think it's a great project. I want to see it move forward. I just don't want there to be something missing here that's going to jam them up going forward. So unless I missed it, I don't see departmental response from police and fire, and I wasn't sure if that's necessary for this, given the revision of how we usually do these during COVID.
Thank you, Councilor Welton. Mayor Bettencourt, do you have?
Yep,
I'm not sure. I'm trying to go through it too. So.
Fair point, Council Welton. I can say that both the police chief and fire chief have been involved in meetings with Mr. Greeley, and they're fully aware, and they raised no objections. I can get that in writing, certainly, but that I can definitely attest that they've been a part of it. They know exactly what's happening, and they're more than comfortable with it. And I know the police chief in particular is very, very pleased with the investment that's going to that particular area.
Great, thank you. That's good enough for me. I just wanted to make sure again that there wasn't anything excluded that would cause further delay. So, thank you.
Thank you, Council Welton. Fair point. Councilor Turco?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor. Mayor, the only and actually, through you to the council. The only thing that I see with this is that Mr. Greeley has to come back every year under the zoning and redo this application. And I'm wondering if that's something we as a council should discuss, and maybe I'll defer to you, Councilman, and hopefully you can give me some education on this.
Councilor Minnie Martin?
Very good point, Council Turco. We had earlier in this year referred it to, I think, Legal Affairs in order to, see, Legal Affairs or Industrial Community Development, but it was referred to subcommittee so that we could shake things out, so that the successful outdoor dining that we have going on, those folks won't have to come back and do 10 copies every season, every year. So, yes, so we are working on that. I just don't recall what subcommittee it's in.
Thank you very much, Council. I appreciate it. Now that you mentioned it, I vaguely remember it, but I think that's something that we should move on for the benefit of some of these applicants, so to save them a whole bunch of time and money each year, even if it's a 3-year extension, on these. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Turco and Councilor Minnie Martin. We'll look at which subcommittee it happens to be in and speak with the chairperson so that they can see where we're at on that in terms of moving forward. Councilor McGinn?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just a point of clarification on that through you to Councilors Turco and Manning Martin. I'm pretty sure it was Industrial and Community Development, and I'm pretty sure what happened was it got referred to Community Development to come back with some proposed language. So I think we're waiting on that language, but I think this is definitely, I'm totally in step with what you're saying, that we can bridge this gap at the time we reconsider the language. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you all. You all have better memories than me, so thank you. Any other councilors like to speak at this time? Have any questions? Seeing none, Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to close the public hearing.
You've heard the motion by Councilor McGinn. On the motion, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to approve the application from Farm Street Realty Group, LLC, 2 Washington Street, Peabody, Mass., requesting outdoor dining license at said 2 Washington Street, Peabody, Mass., is filed in accordance with Section 5.4.6 of the Peabody zoning ordinance as shown on a plan of land dated August 30th, 2021, with the following conditions. Outdoor dining area shall be screened along all property lines of abutting residential properties with an 8-foot-high site impervious privacy fence along the entire length of such property line. The applicant shall have responsibility for ongoing maintenance and repair of the fence. Additionally, along such property line, a landscape buffer shall be established utilizing evergreens such as arborvitaes with a mature height of 30 feet, such that the buffer shall be site impervious even during winter. Owners will make ongoing reasonable efforts to prevent noise from becoming disruptive to residential abutters. Permissible outdoor dining hours Sunday through Wednesday, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m., Thursday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. midnight, year-round. Any lights in the outdoor dining area will be designed and situated such that they do not illuminate abutters' properties, and all lights in the outdoor dining area, with the exception of landscape lights, will be off during times that outdoor dining area is not permitted, that use of the outdoor dining area is not permitted. There will be no smoking of any type or vaping in the outdoor dining area. Plan review must be completed with Health Department prior to start of construction. Outdoor dining area must be included in integrated pest management plan in accordance with zoning ordinance section 5.4.6. Outdoor dining licenses must be reapplied for annually. So moved.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. You've heard the motion on the motion, Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilor McGinn, could you be specific, as I'm on Main Street looking at the side of the building? The 8-foot fence you're talking about is running left side, Main Street side of the property?
We are not. I think they have a plan to include a fence there, that we're not making any requirement there, but
Okay.
that was on the, I believe that was on the special permit
Okay.
site plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Any other further questions? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin. Yes. Sasslaw.
We'll now move to reports of committees. I'll ask Legal Affairs Committee Chairperson Ryan Melville, Councilor Melville, to give us his report.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had one item on the agenda this evening. It was to discuss a response, discussion regarding the contents of the response, and a discussion regarding the procedure in which the RFP was set out and received. Councilors made their thoughts and comments based on the design that was shown, and through that discussion, there were 3 motions made. The first was a motion to request a summary of the procurement law with regards to this RFP from Attorney Khan. That was made by Councilor Turco, and that was unanimously approved. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, there was a motion. One of the part of the report of the committee was there was a motion to request a summary on the procurement law with regards to the RFP from Attorney Khan. So moved.
You've heard the motion. On the motion, any favor? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Melville.
The second motion was to request from the applicant to submit submit financial documents in the pro forma as referenced in the RFP that was published by the city. So moved.
You've heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Melville.
Thank you, Mr. President. The last motion was from Councilor McGinn, was to request from the RFP respondent to provide clarity on the cost estimates and on structural contingencies that may occur, and the cost estimates on the cost of the elevator. So moved.
You've heard the motion. On the motion, any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Melville.
Mr. President, this was also going to be kept in committee, and the respondent, the mayor, and members of the committee we will reconvene on this particular issue as soon as possible when we receive the information, and we can schedule and discuss scheduling with the city clerk and the council president. Thank you very much. That concludes the report of committee.
Thank you for that report, Chairman Melville. We'll now move to the Finance Committee report from this earlier evening. Finance Chairman McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. The City Council Finance Committee met earlier this evening. Present for the committee were Councilors Gould, Manning Martin, Rosignol, Turco, and myself as chair. We had 2 items on the agenda. The first item was a request for transfer of funds from Municipal Code Services Code Recodification in an amount of $15,900. It was presented to us by Mr. Gingras, the Director of Finance, that led to a motion by Councilor Gould as follows. Move to approve the transfer requests from Budget Reserve, account number 1000132057410, in an amount of $15,900 to Municipal Code Services Code Recodification, account number 1000162053127, in an amount of $15,900. Mr. President, that motion was passed unanimously in the Finance Committee, and I now bring that for consideration to the full council. So moved.
You've heard the motion by Councilor McGinn. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Manning Martin. Sasslaw.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
McGinn. Sorry.
Yes.
Charist. Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. The second item on the agenda was an appropriation for rideshare transportation enhancement trust in the amount of $16,468.60. It was presented to us by the Director of Finance, Mr. Gingras. That led to a motion by Councilor Gould to approve the appropriation request for rideshare transportation enhancement trust, account number 250000035,835, in an amount of $16,468.60. Mr. President, that motion passed unanimously at the Finance Committee, and I now bring that to consideration for the full council. So moved.
You've heard the motion by Councilor McGinn. On the motion, is there any discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilors Gould. Manning Martin.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Welton.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Rozignol.
Yes.
Melville.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
Motion carries 11-0.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. That completes the report.
Thank you, Finance Chairman McGinn. At this time, we'll now move to motions, orders, and resolutions. Councilor Gould.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under suspension of the rules, motion to receive item 7A, transfer of funds for the CPC Riverwalk Canal to finance. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Manning Martin.
Motion to, under suspension of the rules, motion to receive item 7B, transfer of funds, CPC Bikeway Independence Greenway expansion, and refer to finance. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Manning Martin.
Under suspension of the rules, motion to receive item 7C, transfer of funds for CPA administration. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed?
Under suspension of the rules, motion to receive item 7E, transfer of funds, various, to finance. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Manning Martin.
Under suspension of the rules, motion to receive item 7F regarding the Peabody Children's Museum and refer to finance. So moved.
It just talks about the possibility of leasing the place and saying that we suggest we look at the location of 10 Main Street where TD Bank was, but it is not at this time requesting any kind of approval for authorizations of funds. So I think we just would move to receive. If you're agreeable to amending your motion, Councilman Martin.
Very well. Motion to receive under suspension of the rules. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilman Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under suspension of the rules, motion to receive item 7B, the bond order for Welch School renovation project, and refer to finance. So moved.
Councilman Martin, just clarify, it's 7G. I think I heard 7B, but I'm also getting much old, so it's 7G is the...
G as in George.
Thank you. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilman Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under suspension of the rules, motion to receive item 9C, the banner request. So moved. And the late communication, rescinding it. So moved.
On the motion, Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. President. With regarding the banner request in the late communication. So the late communication is in regards to the fact that Stage 1 does not have the money to pay for the banner. And she did reach out to, Kelly Brezhnev did reach out to Councilor Gould and myself. And I was wondering, I hate to put you all on the spot, is if Councilor Gould and I are definitely going to donate toward the cost of the banner. I believe it's $550 or $600, Councilor. Let's say $600. If the remainder of the council would like to donate toward the cost of the banner, then we can rescind the late communication and approve 9A to put the banner up, and we could submit to Stage 1. And the check would be made out to Stage 1 Drama Club right on the front, if councils would like to do that. If not, Council Gould and I will do that. But, and Council Manning, do you mind withdrawing your request to rescind the late communication? Thank you, and if anybody would like to add to that, thank you.
Just for good order, Allison has mentioned that we should move to receive and approve the banner, all papers in order, but we should rescind, she has to rescind. We should receive the late communication and take no action. So there's almost two portions. So maybe we just take the first one, the motion to approve the banner, all papers being in order. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. And then the second motion would be to receive the late communication 1.
And I'll vote no on that, so that it doesn't go anywhere. So it's right up.
Councilor Turco, I was just clarifying with Allison, and I apologize.
So I'll vote no on to receive the late communication. Or do we want to receive the late communication either way?
I think we just, as the applicant, the applicant sent it to us, we should receive it just for good order. That doesn't mean that we're not going to contribute and get that done. We've already approved the banner, all papers being in order, but she asked us to do that,
So Council Manning already made that motion, so to receive it. Thank you.
Okay. On the motion, Councilor Shiraz.
Well, just on the conversation, it might be premature. Just on the donation, I'm just looking for clarity where we send it, how we get it to her, everything else. Walt and I was talking about earlier, we certainly would like to help.
Thank you all very much. Yeah, so it's Kelly Bresnahan, Stage 1 Drama Club the check would be made out to. We could either send that care of, somebody's going to have to remind me who the drama teacher is at Peabody High School. Mr. Simmons, is it? No. Samantha Manning. We could send it to Peabody High School, care of her, or we could sell it, Council Welton can handle it, because Kelly Bresnahan actually lives right around the corner from him at Browns Pond. If you don't mind, we can give you the checks, and you can bring them over to her.
On the motion to receive late communication 1?
On the motion to receive late communication, not all the checks, right? So it just, if Allison could, you just send that out to all of us, and I can respond back to the councilors that are wishing to contribute. Thank you for that suggestion, Councilor Turco, and I'd be happy to help quarterback that through. Also, maybe not the time for this discussion, but going forward, maybe it's something that we look into purchasing a banner that can be, adapted to announce these type of things. I would hate to think that there's such good work going on by our youth of Peabody where they're worried about raising $500 to share it with the community. So maybe that's something we can look into in the future.
Thank you, Councilor Weldon. Once again, we just have a motion on the floor to receive late communication 1. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Manning Martin.
No further motions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. Councilor Sasla.
Mr. Chairman.
Motion tonight, Council President.
Apologize, Councilor Sasla. Councilor Gould.
Chairman. In our exuberance to help people, we probably should take this next time offline and have a discussion that not in the public setting. Just a little tidbit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Apologize, Councilor Sasla. That's an important point for Councilor Gould, so I want to make sure. Go ahead, Councilor Sasla.
Yes, Council President, no motions tonight, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sasla. Councilor Welton.
Thank you, Council President. No motions this evening. I just want to publicly thank Brian Grant and the Forestry Department. We had a number of trees down, and they did an exceptional job cleaning up. I know they're still in motion with a lot of branches that came down. And secondly, I just wanted to remind the voters of Ward 1 that we will be voting at the Brown School. We will not have 2 polling locations. It'll be at the Brown School this Tuesday, November 2nd. Thank you. No further motions.
Thank you, Councilor Welton. Councilor Trust.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to reach out to the police department and on some advisory of what is allowed and how we can work with these. Let me just tell you what the issue is these loose scooters now. You're starting to see power bikes and scooters, and now you're starting to see some that no bigger than a tricycle zipping down the roads and things like that. People have been asking me, what is, the ordinance on them? Are they allowed? People talked about, do they need a plate registration or anything like that? Helmets, are they required? Could we just reach out to the police department, make a motion, reach out to the police department to give us some definition on what is allowed on public streets that is motorized, that does not require a license plate? So move.
You've heard the motion. On the motion, any discussion? All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Tress.
And just want to remind all Ward 4 and throughout the city that November 2nd is election for Ward 4. They'll be voting at the middle school, and please, everyone, get out there and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Tress. Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, move to receive item 8A. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, move to receive item 8B and refer to the Director of Finance for a recommendation. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. President. Under suspension of the rules, move to receive item 9A and set up a public hearing. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. President. Not a motion, but consistent with the last two ward councilors. Just a reminder that I think we're doing this because the polling locations are different. I commend the city clerk's office for getting a lot of information pushed to the public, but there are some different voting locations this time around. So for residents of Ward 2 Precinct 3, you'll be voting at the Welsh School. Everybody else, it's normal. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Councilor Mitsoulas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under suspension of the rules, I'd like to go to item 9B, a motion to receive and set up a public hearing.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Mitsoulas?
I have no motions this evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, but I would, as the previous counselor stated, our voting locations are different this year, and Ward 3, Precinct 1, 2, and 3 will be voting on Central Street at the Peabody Regions Life Center. So moved, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mitsoulas. Councilor Turco? Apologize, Councilor Sasla?
Excuse me, I'd just be remiss, just in keeping with the flow, Ward 5 voting is all at the high school this year. Ward 5 is all at the high school, no other locations. Thank you, Council President.
Important clarification. Councilor Turco?
Thank you, Mr. President. You have to give me 2 seconds. I did have a motion, and I'm trying to, I'm sorry, I have it right here. It's a motion to have the Forestry Department trim the tree at 9 Dudley Street. So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor Turco?
No further motions, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Councilor Rossignol?
Mr. President, no motions this evening.
Thank you, Councilor Rossignol. Councilor Melville?
Thank you, Mr. President. I had one motion. Steve Patton, the veterans agent, reached out to me about, we have the veteran vehicle program that's been quite successful, and there's been an update to the law that actually increases the abatement that the volunteers could get. So some of his folks are hitting the 500. It goes up to 1,500. Now is the change, so you can get up to a $1,500 abatement, and he has folks that will fulfill that time. I think Councilor, through you, Mr. President, I think we did this in Human Services, Councilor Manning Martin, I believe. So I'd like to request that the veterans agent appear with the at the Human Services Subcommittee to discuss a request to amend Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 59, as adopted by the Peabody City Council to increase the abatement to up to $1,500. So moved.
On the motion, any discussion? All in favor, any opposed? It's a vote, Counselor Melville.
No further motions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Melville. And just really briefly, just to remind councilors that because of holidays in November, we're moving, and viewers, we're moving our council meetings for that month on Tuesday, November 9th, and Tuesday, November 16th. So you'll get your packages before that, but just wanted to let that know. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
On the motion, all in favor, any opposed? It's a vote. This meeting is now adjourned.